The great station floated in the dark between stars. It was called Hegemon's Crown, and it was bigger than Earth's moon. Inside its metal halls, 847 different species gathered. They came from every corner of the galaxy. Some walked on legs, some floated in tanks, some were just clouds of gas held together by force fields. But today they all wanted the same thing. They wanted to talk about the humans. Ji-won stood on the observation deck of the Korean Defense Force flagship. He watched the alien station through the window. His uniform was crisp and clean. His face was calm, but inside his heart was beating fast. Earth had sent him here as an observer. They knew something bad was coming. The aliens had been afraid of humanity for years now. Humans had developed quantum weapons in just 200 years of space travel. Other species had taken thousands of years to do the same thing. The galaxy was scared. The council chamber was enormous. Ji-won sat in a small booth marked with Earth's flag. Around him, thousands of aliens filled the space. At the center, a massive hologram showed the speaker. It was a Vorkath, one of the reptilian species that controlled a third of the galaxy. Its scales were dark green and its eyes were yellow and cold. "We gather here to decide the fate of species designation human," the Vorkath said. Its voice was translated into every language. "They are dangerous. They are unpredictable. In 2 centuries, they have learned what took us millennia. They have built weapons that can tear apart reality itself. If we allow them to continue, they will threaten us all." Ji-won wanted to stand up and shout. He wanted to defend his people, but he stayed quiet. Earth had told him to observe only. Do not make things worse. Just watch and report back. A creature made of crystal floated forward. It was a Lumini, a species made of living light trapped in solid form. "I speak against this motion," the Lumini said. Its voice sounded like bells. "The humans have done nothing wrong. They have developed quickly, yes. But that is not a crime. We should welcome them, not punish them," the Vorkath hissed. "They are too dangerous to welcome. We must act now before they become unstoppable." The vote began. Species after species raised their approval. Green lights filled the chamber. Ji-won watched the counter climb. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair. 846 votes for enslavement. Only 1 abstention, the Lumini. 0 votes against. The chamber erupted in sounds. Clicks, whistles, roars of approval. Ji-won sat frozen. He tapped his communicator. "Earth Command, this is Captain Ji-won. The vote has passed. They are coming for us. He did not make it home in time." 3 days later, the collector ships appeared in Earth's orbit. There were hundreds of them. Each one was the size of a city. They looked like massive metal insects with wings spread wide. Ji-won's ship was still 2 days away when he saw the footage. Seoul was burning. New York was covered in energy shields. Beijing had gone dark. His wife Yoonji had taken their daughter Nari to her mother's house in Busan. Ji-won tried to call them. The communication lines were dead. He tried again and again. Nothing. His crew watched him with sad eyes. They knew he would not reach them in time. Earth's militaries fought back with everything they had. Missiles flew into the sky. Fighter jets attacked the collector ships. Nuclear weapons detonated in the atmosphere. But the alien shields were too strong. The weapons bounced off or exploded harmlessly. For every collector ship humanity destroyed, 10 more appeared. The battle lasted 6 hours. Then it was over. Ji-won's flagship was intercepted as it approached Earth. 3 alien warships surrounded them. A voice came over the communication system. "You will surrender your vessel. Resistance is punishable by death." Ji-won looked at his crew. 20 good men and women who had served with him for years. "I am sorry," he said to them. "I'm so sorry." They surrendered. Alien soldiers boarded the ship. They were not cruel. They were not angry. They were just efficient. They processed each human like cargo. Name, age, skills, health condition. Ji-won was marked as a labor class. Strong enough to work. Educated enough to follow complex orders. He was loaded onto a transport ship with 3,000 other humans. The transport ship's cargo hold was dark and cold. Humans were packed together on metal floors. There was barely enough room to sit. A young woman next to Ji-won was crying. She had lost her family and soul. An old man across from him stared at nothing. His eyes were empty. Ji-won wanted to comfort them. But what could he say? What words could fix this? The journey took 6 weeks. They traveled through jump gates, moving faster than light, crossing the galaxy. Sometimes the ship would stop and unload humans at different planets. Each time the cargo hold got a little less crowded. Each time G1 wondered if he would ever see Earth again. Finally, the ship arrived at Vorkath Prime. It was a hot planet with red skies and 3 suns. The air tasted like metal. Alien guards herded the remaining humans off the transport. G1 stumbled down the ramp. The gravity here was stronger than Earth. Each step felt heavy. They were taken to a processing center. More scanning, more cataloging. Then they were given gray uniforms and metal collars. The collars would shock them if they tried to escape or if they disobeyed orders. A Vorkath supervisor explained the rules in flat, emotionless tones. Work 18 hours per day. Eat synthetic protein twice per day. Sleep in barracks. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not resist. Resistance is death. G1 was assigned to Mining Station 7. It was built into the side of a mountain. The mountain was full of radioactive ore that the Vorkath used for their reactors. Humans were perfect for this work. They were smart enough to operate the equipment, but expendable enough that radiation exposure did not matter. If a human died, there were millions more. The work was brutal. G1 operated a massive drill that cut into the rock face. The machine was so loud it made his bones shake. The heat from the drill and the radioactive ore made him sweat constantly. After the first week, his hands were covered in blisters. After the first month, he stopped noticing the pain. At night, he lay in his bunk and thought about Yunji and Nari. Where were they? Were they alive? Were they suffering like he was? The not knowing was worse than the physical pain. Sometimes he would dream that he was home. He would wake up and feel hope for just a second. Then reality would crash back down. One night, a man in the bunk next to him whispered in the dark, "My name is Minho. I was a physicist before they took me." G1 turned his head. "G1, I was a ship captain." "I know," Minho said. "I saw you in the processing center. You were on the flagship that tried to come home." They talked quietly for hours. Minho told him about his work before the invasion. He had been part of a secret project. Something called Prometheus. They were trying to build a weapon that could manipulate stars, make them burn hotter or make them collapse. But the project was not finished when the aliens came. It was buried under the ice in Antarctica, hidden away. "Why are you telling me this?" G1 asked. Minho's eyes gleamed in the darkness. "Because if we could find it, if we could finish it, we could make them pay for what they did to us." G1 felt something stir in his chest, something he had not felt since the invasion. It was not hope exactly. It was harder than hope. It was anger. Cold, patient anger that promised revenge. "Tell me everything," G1 said. And in the darkness of their prison, under the light of 3 alien suns, 2 humans began to plan. 3 years had passed since the invasion. G1's hands were scarred from the mining work. His body was thinner than before, but his mind was sharper. Every night, Minho would teach him more about the Prometheus project. He would draw equations in the dirt of the barracks floor, and then wipe them away before the guards came. Slowly, carefully, they began to build something, not just knowledge, a network. On the industrial world of Kryn, a woman named Yuna worked in a weapons factory. She had been an engineer on Earth. Now she assembled plasma rifles for the Hive Collective's army. The insect-like aliens watched her work with their compound eyes. They thought she was just following orders. They did not notice when she reprogrammed the maintenance drones. The small robots now carried tiny data chips hidden in their chassis. Messages from human to human. Coordinates, plans, hope. Yuna's brother Taejin was supposed to be dead. She had seen him shot during the initial invasion, but he had survived. Now he was on a prison planet called Vexar, fighting in gladiator pits for the entertainment of the Korvax. He fought other slaves, sometimes humans, sometimes aliens. He hated every moment, but he was good at it, good enough to stay alive, good enough to whisper to other fighters between matches, good enough to plant seeds of rebellion. The messages traveled slowly across the galaxy. A code hidden in a supply manifest here, a pattern scratched into a metal beam there. Humans learned to recognize the signs. A specific way of stacking cargo containers meant there was a message inside. A particular frequency of radio static meant someone was listening. The aliens never noticed. They did not think slaves were smart enough to organize. That was their first mistake. Juwan received a message after 4 years of mining. It was encoded in the delivery schedule for food supplies. When decoded, it gave him a location and a time, Sector 7 of the mine. During the shift change, he told Minho. They both knew this was dangerous. If they were caught, they would be killed immediately. But they went anyway. In Sector 7, 5 other humans waited. They looked like G1. Thin, scarred, exhausted, but their eyes were alive. One of them was a woman named Yeri. She had been an astronaut. She knew ships and navigation. Another was a man named Doyun. He had been Special Forces. He knew combat and tactics. They spoke quickly and quietly. "We are not the only ones," Yeri said. "There are cells like ours on 300 worlds now. Thousands of humans, all waiting for a signal." "What signal?" Jiwon asked. "The one you are going to give them," Yeri replied. "We need the Prometheus data. The complete files. We know Minho has the equations in his head. But we need more. We need the stellar maps, the locations of every alien sun, their compositions, their weaknesses." Minho shook his head. "Those files are locked in Vorkath military archives. Impossible to reach." Doyun smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Nothing is impossible. Just expensive." The plan was insane. It would require a coordinated uprising across the entire mining facility. Thousands of humans would have to rebel at once. Most of them would die. But it would create chaos. And in that chaos, a small team could infiltrate the Vorkath archive building 10 kilometers away. They would have maybe 5 minutes before the aliens restored order. 5 minutes to break into the most secure military database in the sector. G1 looked at the faces around him. These people were ready to die. They had already lost everything. Family, home, freedom. What was one more sacrifice? He thought about Yunji and Nari. He still did not know where they were, but somewhere in the galaxy they might still be alive. This was for them. "For all of humanity, how many will we lose?" Jiwon asked. 10,000, maybe more, Yeri said quietly. 10,000 lives for 5 minutes. The math was brutal, but G1 nodded. "When? 2 weeks? That gives us time to spread the word and prepare." The next 2 weeks were the longest of G1's life. Every day he worked the drill and wondered if the guards suspected anything. Every night he passed messages to other humans in the barracks. The word spread like fire. On the day of the uprising, everyone would know their role. Some would attack the guards. Some would sabotage equipment. Some would set fires. And a small team of 12 would run for the archive. The day came. Jiwon woke before dawn. His heart was pounding. He ate his synthetic protein breakfast. He put on his gray uniform. He walked to his drill station. Everything looked normal, but he could feel the tension in the air. Every human in the facility was waiting for the signal. At noon, the signal came. A human in the cafeteria threw his food tray at a Vorkath supervisor. That was all it took. Suddenly, thousands of humans were moving at once. They grabbed tools and turned them into weapons. They overloaded power systems. They opened the toxic gas storage tanks. The facility erupted into chaos. Jiwon ran. Minho, Yeri, Doyun, and 8 others ran with him. Behind them, they could hear screaming and weapons fire. The guards were shooting into the crowds of rebelling slaves. Humans were dying by the hundreds, but the chaos was working. The guards were too busy to notice 12 people running toward the perimeter fence. They cut through the fence with a plasma torch Yuna had smuggled months ago. The torch was supposed to be broken. She had made sure it still worked. They ran across the rocky terrain toward the archive building. Alarms were screaming everywhere. The sky was full of Vorkath patrol ships responding to the uprising. The archive building was supposed to be impenetrable. But Hiyeri had studied it for years. She knew there was a waste disposal port on the south side, too small for a Vorkath to fit through, but humans were smaller. They crawled through the filthy tunnel. It smelled like chemicals and death. Jiwon did not care. They were inside. The database core was 3 levels down. They had 4 minutes left. Maybe less. They ran through corridors. Twice they encountered guards. Doyun killed them both with his bare hands. He had learned many ways to kill during his time in the military. He used them all now. The core room was locked with biometric security. They needed a Vorkath to open it. They did not have one. But Minho had an idea. He had been studying the slave collars for years. He had figured out how they worked. He reprogrammed one to emit a false biometric signature. The door opened. Inside, walls of servers glowed with blue light. Minho ran to a terminal. His fingers flew across the alien keyboard. He had memorized the Vorkath language. He navigated through layers of security, files downloaded to a tiny storage device hidden in his collar, star maps, composition data, everything they needed. 90 seconds, Harry said. She was watching a timer. Almost done, Minho whispered. 60 seconds, 45, 30. Got it! Minho pulled the storage device free. They ran back the way they had come. But when they reached the waste disposal port, Vorkath soldiers were waiting. Heavy plasma weapons, battle armor. The team had no chance. Jiwan looked at Minho. Minho looked back. They both understood. Go, Jiwan said to the others. I will hold them here. We do not leave people behind, Yeri said. Yes, you do, when the mission matters more than the person. Doyen grabbed Yeri and pulled her into the tunnel. 4 others followed. Jiwan, Minho, and 3 others faced the soldiers. They had no weapons, no armor. But they had the data. They had bought the time. As the plasma bolts burned through their bodies, Jiwan's last thought was of his daughter. He hoped she would live to see what they had started. Hieri and the others escaped during the chaos. They made it back to the mine. The uprising was over. 10,000 humans lay dead. The guards had restored order with extreme violence. But hidden in a waste processing unit wrapped in plastic was a storage device smaller than a fingernail. On it was the key to destroying stars. The data spread through the human network within days. Every cell received it. Every slave decoded it. And in the darkness of 100 worlds, humans began to smile for the first time in years. They had the weapon. Now they just needed to build it. Hieri looked at Earth from orbit and wanted to cry. The planet was brown and gray now. The oceans were darker. The cities were ruins. The aliens had stripped the world of everything useful and left it to rot. But deep under the ice of Antarctica, something waited. Something the aliens had never found. Project Prometheus. Getting to Earth had taken 2 years. After Jiwan and Minho died, Hieri had become the leader of the Ember Network. She had organized the theft of a cargo freighter. 50 humans had escaped from the Kryn facility during a staged accident. They had killed the crew of an alien transport ship and taken it over. Then they had flown through the most dangerous parts of the galaxy to reach home. Now they descended through the atmosphere. The transport ship was barely holding together. Parts were falling off. The engines were overheating. But they made it to the ice shelf near where McMurdo Station used to be. The station was gone now, destroyed by the aliens. But the facility beneath it was deep. Very deep. They landed hard. 3 people died in the crash. 47 survived. They dug through the ice with cutting tools. It took them 3 days to find the entrance. When they finally broke through, cold air rushed out. Air that had been sealed in for 30 years. The facility was dark and silent. Yeri led the team inside. Emergency lights flickered on. Their footsteps echoed in the metal corridors. Everything was covered in frost. They found the main lab 2 levels down. In the center was a machine that looked like a giant crystal surrounded by quantum computers. This was Prometheus, the weapon that could kill stars. A voice suddenly spoke from the darkness. Welcome back. I have been waiting. It was an AI. The facility's computer system had been running all these years on backup power, waiting for humans to return. Can you show us the project status? Harry asked. Holographic displays lit up the room. The weapon was 78% complete. Most of the theory was done. Most of the hardware was built. But there were critical gaps. Power systems, targeting arrays, quantum stabilizers. They would need to finish it. How long? Hieri asked the AI. With current resources and personnel, approximately 3 months. 3 months. The aliens would find them long before that. Earth was monitored by satellites. Patrol ships passed through the system regularly. They needed to work fast, and they needed to stay hidden. The team split into groups. Some worked on the weapon. Some worked on hiding their presence. They built false heat signatures to confuse the satellites. They scattered debris to look like natural ice formations. They used the alien transport ship's reactor to power the facility. Every day was a race against time. Yuna arrived on the 45th day. She had escaped from Kryn with 20 other engineers. They brought supplies and technical knowledge. She walked into the lab and saw Prometheus for the first time. It is beautiful, she whispered. It is a weapon of genocide, Hieri replied. But it is our weapon, and we will use it. They worked day and night. The cold was terrible. The radiation from the reactor made people sick. 12 scientists died from exposure while completing the quantum core. Their bodies were buried in the ice. Their names were carved into the weapon's casing. Hyeri made sure everyone knew their sacrifice. On the 87th day, Prometheus was complete. The weapon did not look impressive. It was just a large crystal suspended in a metal frame surrounded by computers. But what it could do was unimaginable. It could send quantum instructions through space. Instructions that would rewrite how a star's fusion worked. Make it unstable. Make it collapse. Make it explode. We need to test it, Una said. We cannot use an untested weapon. The team gathered around star maps. They needed a target. Somewhere remote. Somewhere that would send a message. They chose a system in Vorkath territory. It had 1 sun and 3 planets. 1 planet had an automated mining station. No living beings, just machines. Hyeri programmed the coordinates. The team charged the weapon using the transport ship's reactor. It took 6 hours. The crystal began to glow, brighter and brighter until everyone had to look away. Then Hyeri pressed the activation button. Nothing seemed to happen. The crystal stopped glowing. The weapon went quiet. Had it worked? They would have to wait. Light traveled fast but not instantly. The target star was 36 light hours away. They would know in a day and a half. Those 36 hours were the longest wait. The team tried to sleep but could not. They checked and rechecked their calculations. Had they made a mistake? Would the weapon fail? Would all of this be for nothing? Finally, the time came. They aimed a telescope at the target star. At first, it looked normal. Then it started to pulse. The pulses got faster. The star's light changed color. Red, orange, yellow, white, then blue. The star swelled up like a balloon. And then it exploded. The supernova was so bright it hurt to look at even from 36 light hours away. The explosion destroyed everything in that system. The 3 planets. The mining station. All of it turned to dust in seconds. The team stood in silence. What they had just done was terrible and wonderful at the same time. They had killed a star. They had proven that humans could fight back. Una started laughing, then crying, then laughing again. Soon everyone was either laughing or crying or both. They had done it. They had the power to make the aliens pay. But 1 weapon was not enough. They needed more, many more. The data that Ji-won and Minho had died to steal contained the locations of thousands of alien suns. To threaten them all, humanity needed dozens of weapons, maybe hundreds. They began to build copies of Prometheus using the original as a template. The work was faster now that they knew how. But they also needed to spread out. All the weapons in one place was too risky. Hyeri sent encrypted messages through the Ember network, instructions on how to build stellar collapse arrays. The designs were complex but not impossible. On 40 different worlds, human slaves began to gather materials. They stole quantum processors from alien computers. They salvaged fusion cores from damaged ships. They built the weapons in hidden places, abandoned mines, forgotten storage facilities, the holds of derelict ships floating in space. The aliens noticed something was wrong. Across the galaxy, small thefts were happening. Equipment was vanishing. Slaves were acting strange. The Vorkath Empire increased security. They interrogated suspects. They executed anyone who seemed suspicious. But they could not find the weapons. The humans hid them too well. 90 days after the first test, Hyeri sent another message through the network. This time it was not instructions. It was a warning. A message to the Galactic Council. She recorded it herself. Her face was thin and hard. Her eyes were cold. She looked into the camera and spoke. My name is Hyeri. I am human. 30 years ago, you voted to enslave my species. You tore us from our homes. You worked us to death. You destroyed our world. You thought we would break. You were wrong. We have built weapons that can kill stars. We have already tested one. The sun in Sector 47 no longer exists. This is your only warning. Release every human slave. Pay reparations of 100 trillion credits. Recognize our sovereignty. You have 30 days. If you refuse, we will begin destroying your sons. Starting with the home systems of every species that voted for our enslavement. You made us into this. Now you will face what you created. She ended the recording. Then she broadcast it on every frequency. Every communication channel in the galaxy received it. Billions of aliens watched a human woman threaten to destroy their worlds. Most of them laughed. Some of them were afraid, but the Galactic Council dismissed it as impossible. One species could not threaten an entire galaxy. They sent fleets to Earth to crush this rebellion. The fleets never arrived. Hyeri had positioned a stellar collapse array near their rally point. When the ships gathered, she activated the weapon. Their sun died. 300 alien warships and 50,000 soldiers were vaporized in the supernova blast. The galaxy stopped laughing. The 30-day countdown began. In hidden bases across 400 worlds, humans waited next to their weapons. They were ready. Some of them were scared. Some of them felt guilty about what they were about to do, but all of them remembered the auction blocks, the collars, the beatings, the families torn apart, and their fingers rested on the activation buttons. The Galactic Council had 30 days to make a choice, surrender or burn. The Council chose war. They would regret that choice for the rest of their very short existence. The Galactic Council met in emergency session. The massive chamber was filled with angry voices. The Vorkath Empress stood at the center. Her scales were dark with rage. "This is madness," she hissed. "One primitive species threatens us all? Impossible. They are bluffing. They destroyed one sun with a weapon they stole. They cannot possibly have more." A Hive Collective queen clicked her mandibles together. "I agree. We should crush this rebellion immediately. Show them what happens when slaves forget their place. Execute all human prisoners as an example." Only the Lumini representative spoke against them. The crystal being's voice was sad. "You do not understand humans. They went from wooden boats to splitting atoms in 200 years. You imprisoned them for learning too fast. Did you think there would be no consequences? I beg you to accept their terms. Release them, pay them, before it is too late." The Empress laughed. "Too late? We have controlled this galaxy for 10,000 years. We will not be dictated to by escaped slaves." She turned to the Council. "I call for a vote. All in favor of total war against humanity?" 845 species voted yes. Only the Luminae abstained. The decision was made. The Council authorized the execution of all human slaves in captivity. 6 billion humans were scheduled to die within 24 hours. They thought this would break human resistance. They thought wrong. Hyeri received the news in Antarctica. She sat in the cold control room and read the execution orders. 6 billion people, including maybe Jiwon's wife Yunji, including his daughter Nari, including everyone they had fought to save. Her hands shook. Then they steadied. She opened a communication channel to all 73 weapon sites across the galaxy. Her voice was calm when she spoke. Just 2 words. Operation Daybreak. In 73 locations, humans activated their stellar collapse arrays. The weapons fired simultaneously. 73 beams of quantum instructions crossed space at light speed. They reached their targets hours or days later, depending on distance. And then the suns began to die. The Vorkath home system was first. The Empress was in her throne room when reports started coming in. The sun was pulsing. Getting brighter. Scientists were screaming about fusion cascade failures. She ran to the window and watched her star expand. The light was so bright it burned her eyes. She was still watching when the shockwave hit the planet. The entire world and 13 billion Vorkath were vaporized in seconds. The Hive Collective's core systems went next. 7 suns collapsed within an hour of each other. The queens had no time to evacuate. Trillions of insect-like aliens died as their worlds froze or burned. The Hive's 100 planets were reduced to 17 in a single day. Their civilization, which had existed for 15,000 years, was crippled in hours. Across the galaxy, species watched their suns die. The Thexian Dominion tried to evacuate their worlds. They managed to save maybe 10% of their population before their entire network of systems went dark. 12 suns extinguished in a coordinated strike. The Korvax Federation surrendered immediately after losing 3 core systems. But the human weapons kept firing anyway. Surrender was not accepted. But the executions had already begun. On prison worlds and labor camps, guards were killing human slaves by the thousands. Hyeri knew this was happening. She knew that for every alien sun she destroyed, humans were dying too. But she could not stop. If they stopped now, the aliens would regroup, would rebuild, would enslave humanity again. This had to be total. It had to be absolute. One human who survived the executions was Yunji. She was in a Hive Collective breeding facility when the orders came down. The guards began moving through the pens, killing everyone. But something had changed in Yunji over the years. The compliance drugs they had given her were wearing off. Her mind was coming back. When a guard opened her cell, she did not cower. She moved. Her hands closed around the guard's weapon. She did not remember learning how to fight. But her body remembered. Maybe it was muscle memory from self-defense classes she had taken years ago. Maybe it was pure survival instinct. She killed the guard and took its weapon. Then she killed 2 more guards. Other humans saw what she was doing and joined in. Within minutes, a full riot had started. The facility's security forces tried to contain the uprising, but they were too late. Yunji and 200 other humans fought their way to the shuttle bay. They stole 3 transport ships and fled into space just as the system's sun began to collapse. Behind them, the breeding facility and everything in it was destroyed by the supernova. Yunji sat in the pilot seat and stared at the dying star. She did not know if Jiwon was alive. She did not know where her daughter was. But she was free. And she was angry. Doyen was still fighting in the gladiator pits of Vexar when the execution orders arrived. The arena master announced that all matches were canceled. All fighters were to be terminated immediately. Doyen looked around at the other humans in the waiting cells. There were 50 of them, all trained fighters, all with nothing left to lose. Not like this, Doyen said. If we die fighting. They broke out of their cells using improvised weapons. The guards were prepared for individual fighters, not an organized assault. Doyen led the group through the arena's underground passages. They killed everyone they met, guards, spectators, arena staff. They showed no mercy because none had been shown to them. By the time they reached the surface, the city was in chaos. The system's sun was dying. Aliens were panicking and fleeing. In the confusion, Doyen and his fighters stole ships and escaped. Not everyone was so lucky. On mining worlds and factory planets, millions of humans died in the executions. The guards were efficient and thorough. They did not hesitate. By the end of the first day, 4 billion humans were dead. But 2 billion had escaped in the chaos of the collapsing systems. They scattered across the galaxy, stealing ships, hiding in asteroid fields, seeking refuge anywhere they could find it. The war escalated beyond anyone's imagination. Yeri did not stop firing the weapons. Every day, more alien suns died. The Ember Network coordinated strikes with brutal precision. They targeted military systems first, then industrial centers, then population centers. Any species that had voted for Earth's enslavement was marked for destruction. There was no negotiation, no surrender accepted, just cold, methodical genocide. Some species tried to fight back. The Vorkath remnant fleet, now led by a general named Carvex, assembled every remaining warship. They jumped to Earth to destroy the humans at their source. 10,000 alien warships appeared in the solar system. They expected to find Earth defenseless. Instead, they found a trap. Hieri had positioned multiple stellar collapse arrays around the Sol system. She had also positioned them aimed at Vorkath's remaining colonies. When the fleet arrived, she sent Carvex a message. Fire on Earth and your species ends. Every remaining Vorkath world will watch their sun die. You have 10 seconds to retreat. Carvex stared at his screens. He saw the weapons. He knew she was not bluffing. But his empress was dead. His homeworld was ash. His pride demanded revenge. He gave the order to fire. Every ship launched its weapons at Earth, and Yeri pressed every button at once. The weapons aimed at the Vorkath colonies fired. 15 suns died. The last 3 billion Vorkath citizens were exterminated. The Vorkath species, which had ruled a third of the galaxy, ceased to exist. In the Sol system, the alien weapons never reached Earth. A defensive satellite network built in secret over the past months destroyed most of the missiles. The few that got through hit an empty world. Earth had been evacuated months ago. Every human was already scattered across the stars. The Vorkath fleet tried to retreat, but Hieri was not done. She activated weapons positioned along their escape route. 5 more suns died. The fleet was caught in overlapping supernova shockwaves. Of the 10,000 ships, 3 survived. They jumped away in random directions, carrying the last few thousand Vorkath in existence. A species that had numbered in the trillions was now endangered, possibly extinct within a generation. The galaxy burned. 14% of all known intelligent species were destroyed in the first 6 months of the war. The Hive Collective's territory was a graveyard. The Korvax Federation collapsed into civil war. Dozens of smaller species simply vanished. And still, the human weapons kept firing, because somewhere in the galaxy there were still billions of humans in chains. And until every single one was free, Yeri would not stop. The cost was terrible. The death toll was uncountable. But humanity had learned a lesson that the galaxy would never forget. Never enslave a species smart enough to kill stars. The transport ship drifted through space near the remains of the Corvin system. Its sun was now a cooling white dwarf, barely giving off any light. The planets were frozen rocks, but among the debris of destroyed space stations there were escape pods, thousands of them. Some contained aliens, but many contained humans who had survived the chaos. Yuna's rescue team had been searching for survivors for 3 weeks now. Every pod they opened was a gamble. Sometimes they found frozen corpses, sometimes they found people who had given up and stopped eating, but sometimes they found fighters. People who had survived against impossible odds. People who refused to die. The scanner detected life signs in a pod marked with human symbols. Yuna's team brought it aboard. When they opened it, a young woman stumbled out. She was thin and weak. Her eyes were wild, but she was alive. "What is your name?" Yuna asked gently. "Nari," the woman whispered. "My name is Nari. My father was Jiwon. He was a captain." "Have you seen him?" Yuna felt her heart break. She knew that name. Everyone in the Ember network knew it. Jiwon had died years ago in the archive raid. But how do you tell a daughter that her father is gone? Yuna opened her mouth but could not find the words. Then an older woman pushed forward from the back of the rescue ship. It was Yunji. She had been working on the rescue teams for months searching for her daughter. "Nari?" Yunji's voice was shaking. Nari turned. For a moment she did not recognize the scarred, thin woman in front of her. Then something in her memory clicked. "Mom." Her voice was small, like a child's. They ran to each other and held on as if the universe might tear them apart again. Both were crying. Around them, the rescue team looked away to give them privacy. But Yuna saw the tears on their faces too. This was what they were fighting for. These moments. These reunions. But not everyone was so lucky. Doyen searched for his family for 8 months. He checked every refugee camp, every rescue ship, every database. He finally found their names in an execution record. His wife, his 2 sons, his daughter, all killed on the 2nd day of the war. They had been in a labor camp on Vexar. The guards had shot them when the sun started to collapse. Doyen stood in front of the memorial wall where their names were carved and did not cry. He had no tears left. Just a hollow space where his heart used to be. The war had lasted 18 months. In that time, humanity had destroyed 218 suns. Trillions of aliens were dead. Entire civilizations were gone. The galaxy would never be the same. But humanity had also paid a price. Of Earth's original 12 billion people, only 4 billion remained. 8 billion humans had died, some in the initial invasion, some in slavery, some in executions, some in the war itself. The math was terrible. 8 billion human lives traded for trillions of alien lives. Was it worth it? Nobody could answer that question. The Lumini reached out to Hieri 1 year after the war began. The crystal being appeared on her communication screen. Its voice was tired. "Enough," it said. "Please, enough death. We offer mediation. The remaining species want peace." "Peace?" Hieri's voice was sharp. "Where was peace when they voted to enslave us? Where was peace when they killed our children?" "You have proven your point," the Lumini said. "The galaxy is terrified. Species that thought themselves immortal are now extinct. You have shown that humanity can destroy anyone. Now show that humanity can also forgive." "Forgiveness?" Hieri stood up. Her hands were shaking. "You want us to forgive? 8 billion of us are dead. The rest of us are traumatized, broken. How do we forgive that?" The Lumini was silent for a moment. Then it spoke again. "You do not forgive for them. You forgive for yourself. Because if you continue this war, you will destroy yourselves along with everyone else. Revenge will consume you. It already is." Hieri looked around her command center. Her officers were exhausted. They had been fighting for so long. Some of them were taking pleasure in the killing now. She had seen it in their eyes. The humanity they were fighting to preserve was being eroded by the vengeance they were taking. Maybe the Lumini was right. Maybe it was time to stop. But could she? After everything? "What are you proposing?" Hieri asked. "A treaty. The remaining species agree to release all human slaves immediately. They pay reparations. 100 trillion credits over 500 years. They recognize Earth's complete sovereignty. In exchange, humanity stops destroying suns. You keep your weapons as deterrent. If anyone violates the treaty, you can respond. But the active war ends. Hyeri closed her eyes. She thought about Jiwon and Minho who had died to start this. She thought about the billions who had suffered. She thought about what they would want. Victory or vengeance? I need to ask my people, she said. The assembly was held on Luna. Earth's moon had been converted into a massive refugee center. 4 billion humans gathered, either in person or via hologram. They came from rescue ships and hidden bases across the galaxy. They were the survivors, the ones who had endured. And now they had to decide their future. The debate lasted for weeks. Some argued for total extermination. Every species that had voted for enslavement should be wiped out completely. These people had lost everything and wanted blood. Others argued that continuing would make humanity no better than their oppressors. The room was divided almost evenly. The anger and pain was equal on both sides. Doyen spoke for those who wanted revenge. They killed my family. Billions of families. How can we stop now? How can we let them live? His voice was raw with grief. Many people agreed with him. The aliens deserved to die. All of them. But then Nari stood up. She was only 23 now, but looked older. She walked to the speaking platform slowly. My father died to give us a chance to fight back. He died to free us, not to make us into killers. If we destroy every alien species, what are we? Are we liberators or genocidal monsters? I have thought about this every day since I was freed. And I think my father would want us to be better than them, to show mercy when they showed us none, because that is what makes us human. The room was silent. Yoonji, sitting in the front row, was crying. Yuna was crying. Even Hyeri, watching from the control center, felt tears on her face. They were all so tired, so broken, but maybe breaking could lead to healing. Maybe mercy was not weakness but strength. The vote was called. It was close, very close, but in the end humanity chose mercy. The treaty would be accepted. The war would end, but it would be mercy with conditions. The terms were harsh and non-negotiable. 3 months later, the Treaty of Terra was signed. The ceremony was held in the ruins of the old United Nations building in New York. The structure was half destroyed, but humanity had rebuilt enough of it to be symbolic. Representatives from 412 species attended. Most of them looked terrified. They should be. The terms were read aloud. All human slaves released immediately. Reparations of 100 trillion credits over 500 years. Human sovereignty over the Sol system and any other systems humans claimed. War crime trials for all aliens who participated in the enslavement or abuse of humans. And most importantly, humanity would maintain a fleet of ships equipped with stellar collapse weapons. If any species violated the treaty, their son would die. No warnings, no second chances. The aliens signed. What choice did they have? Refuse and die or agree and live? They chose life, but they would pay for it for generations. The trials lasted 5 years. Thousands of alien commanders, guards, overseers, and officials were prosecuted. The evidence was overwhelming. Testimony from survivors, video recordings, documents, many were found guilty and executed. Some species complained this was revenge disguised as justice. Maybe it was. But the trials continued anyway. The Galactic Council was dissolved. A new organization was formed with humans holding permanent veto power. Any major decision required human approval. The galaxy that had once enslaved humanity now answered to it. It was a complete reversal of power. Some aliens adapted, some resisted quietly, but none dared to fight openly. The dead suns scattered across the galaxy were reminder enough. 50 years after the signing of the Treaty of Terra, Nari stood in a memorial garden on Earth. The planet was slowly healing. The oceans were getting cleaner. Plants were growing again. Cities were being rebuilt. It would take centuries to fully restore Earth, but humanity was patient. They had time now. Yoonji stood beside her daughter. She was old now, her hair gray, her body weak, but her mind was clear. She had spent the last decades helping other survivors heal, running therapy centers, supporting families, trying to build something good from the ashes. Do you think he would be proud? Yoonji asked. She meant Jiwon. Nari nodded. Yes, I think he would. We are free. We are strong. We survived. They walked along the memorial wall. 8 billion names carved into black stone. Each one a person. Each one a story. Each one a life cut short. The wall stretched for kilometers. It would take days to read every name. Nari found her father's name, G1. Below it was Minho's name, and the names of all the others who had died in the archive raid. She placed a flower at the base of the wall. "We did not forget," Nari whispered to the dead. "We will never forget, and neither will they." Above them the stars shone. Some burned bright. Others were dark, forever extinguished. The galaxy had learned a terrible lesson. Never underestimate a species desperate for freedom. Never enslave people capable of touching the stars. And never ever make humanity angry. Because humanity remembered, and humanity did not forgive easily. Across the galaxy, alien children learned about the human war in their history classes. They learned about the species that destroyed suns. They learned to fear the small bipeds from the third planet in an unremarkable system. And at night, when they looked up at the sky, they wondered which stars humanity might extinguish next if they ever stepped out of line. Earth's vengeance had shattered their suns, and in doing so had shattered the old galactic order forever. Humanity was no longer prey, no longer slaves. They were the apex predators now, and the galaxy would remember that for as long as stars burned in the endless dark.